So, ang gender media is tumutukoy siya sa paraan kung paano nilalarawan ng media ang mga gender roles o ang mga inaasahang ugali at papel ng lalaki, babae at iba pang gender. Mahalaga ito dahil ang media gaya ng TV, pelikula, balita at social media ay may malaking epekto sa paghubog ng pananaw ng lipunan tungkol sa kasarian. Pinapakita ng gender in media kung paano napapalaganap ang stereotypes tulad ng ideyang lalaki lang ang dapat malakas o babae lang ang dapat nasa bahay. Pero pwede rin itong maging paraan para itaguyod ang gender equality sa pamamagitan ng pagpapakita ng patas, totoo at makatarungang representasyon sa lahat ng kasarian. Kaya ang gender media ay mahalaga sa pag-unawa at sa ugnayan ng kasarian at komunikasyon sa lipunan.
Gender in media is the study of how media, like TV, movies, news, social media, advertisements, and magazines, shows or talk about gender, meaning how people are expected to act based on being male, female, or other gender identities. Media can influence what we believe about how men and women should look, act, speak, and even what jobs they should do. Men are often shown in the media as strong, tough, and leaders. Women are often shown as emotional, caring, or focused on beauty and appearance. People with other gender identities like non-binary or transgender individuals are often ignored or shown unfairly. However, media can also be used in positive way to challenge stereotypes and promote gender equality. Today, many shows, films, and online creators are showing stronger, more diverse, and more realistic gender roles. Understanding gender and the media is important because it helps us see when media messages are unfair or untrue. It helps us think critically about what we watch, read, and share. It encourages more equal and respectful treatment of all genders in society.
Today I'm going to discuss the perspective of gender in the media. Perspective of gender in the media focuses on how media content and institutions shape our understanding of gender, often perpetuating or challenging existing of stereotypes. This perspective examines the role of media in gender association, highlighting how it influences perspective in social norms about gender roles and behavior. And some of the important points of this approach are gender and socialization. Media, similar to family, school, and peers, also teaches a person about what we are right gender rules and behavior. Reinforcing stereotypes, media constantly depicts gender roles in a conventional and restrictive manner, reinforcing the stereotypes of masculinity and femininity. Underrepresentation and misrepresentation. Ladies and LGBTQ people can be underrepresented or misrepresented in media, contributing to distort views of their roles and experiences. Impact of identity and values. Media content may determine individual identities, social norms, and gender-related values, affecting how people see themselves and others. Lastly, challenges and opportunities. Although the media might reinforce gender inequality, it also can challenge stereotypes and support more diverse and equal representation.
Gender role assignment in mass media. Mass media influences public perception by frequently portraying individuals according to socially accepted gender norms. These include platforms like television, film, advertising, and digital content. Sinasabi po rito na ang media ay may malaking parte sa pag-identidad ng gender. It includes perception to men and women. Malaki ang epekto ng mass media sa pagre-representa ng gender para sa society. Katulad na lamang ng mga palabas na naghahalin tulad sa mga old-fashioned na paniniwala ng mga matatanda tulad para sa mga lalaki at babae. Dahil dito ay nagiging norm siya o paniniwala ng mga tao na nakakapanood ng mismong palabas. An example of this is the portrayal of men in movies. Makikita natin sa mga palabas na ang mga lalaki ay often portrayed as superheroes or Sa mga pamilya naman ay matalino, sila ang nabibigyan ng mga solusyon, at sila ang mga namumuno. Sa mga palabas na ito ay na ibabahagi sa mga kabataan ang paniniwala tungkol sa mga lalaki na ang lalaki lang dapat ang may kakayahang mamuno, which is hindi. Also, ang mga lalaki sa palabas ay hindi emotionally inclined. Kumbaga, hindi sila masyado nagpapakita ng emotion, which is, I think, is sugar-coated. Men can cry, men can feel emotions, men can be validated, especially when it comes to tragic situations. Also, an example is women are commonly depicted in passive or supportive roles where beauty, emotions, caregiving, and romantic involvement are highlighted over personal agency or intelligence. Pinapakita po dito na ang mga babae sa mga palabas ay hindi masyadong napoportray as someone who is intelligent enough to excel with their own brains and beauty. Dahil dito, sa mga palabas, namamaliit ang mga babae. I am not generalizing, but it is movies are one of the factor why women are being oppressed. And I think movies like this should be reviewed or should be criticized by audience, especially when it contains malicious information. Media tends to diminish women in positions of authority, technical fields, and decision-making roles, both on screen and in production roles like directing or writing. Sexualization of female characters is frequent, especially in entertainment media where women are often valued more for their looks than for their skills or personalities. So, ayun nga po ang sinasabi ko. Ang mga babae ay madalas na napoportray sa masamang gawain, which is hindi dapat gawing common topics or scenarios for movies or sa mga palabas sa television. Kaya naman ang tamang paggawa ng palabas at mga papanoorin para sa mga tao ay maging makatotohanan at fact-checked. Kaya naman dapat ang mga palabas ay ginagawa na may tamang proseso para naman hindi lamang ito ay entertainment para sa mga tao, ito ay kapupulutan din ng aral na mapapaisip ang mga manonood, ano nga ba ang silbi ng mga lalaki at babae sa isang palabas? Next reporter will be Mio Mendez.
Hello everyone, I am Mion Janet P. Mendez, and I will be discussing gender stereotypes in mass media. Gender stereotypes simplify expectations around appearance, traits, and behavior for men and women, often leading to social penalties for nonconformity. Simply speaking, when we don't fit a specific stereotype, we kind of suffer some consequences. So, early life experiences shape gender identity, which then continue to change as a result of social and cultural influences, with the media having a significant impact. We all, as our generation today, we have a very different childhood from the older generations, because we have mass media as a prominent factor in our growing up. We saw media kind of shape our roles and our gender, and it makes us form these stereotypes, these expectations, these assumptions based on what we see in the media. So because we are exposed to the media growing up, it heavily influences our expectations, our gender identity, and we tend to conform to these stereotypes because it is what is expected or assumed of us. Stereotypes, to differentiate it from roles, which was discussed earlier, stereotypes are what is assumed of our gender. But this is also related to roles, which are what are expected of us. But they are kind of directly related to each other. But in stereotypes, we have these harmful assumptions. And because of these harmful assumptions, we are also expecting from them. So there are two things that are present alongside stereotypes. So we have objectification and sexualization. So objectification, from the word itself, we view things or view people as tools or objects. So we kind of talk about these people like they're an object. So this usually happens with celebrities. We sit back, we watch a movie, and then we kind of sometimes critique the actors based on their appearance or based on their clothes, and we kind of dumb them down to that specific identity because that is what we see in the media. That is how they are portraying themselves, and that is how they are being portrayed. So we have this tendency to treat them only based on how they present themselves, which is through their clothes or through their appearance, without actually regarding them as an actual human being behind the camera or behind the media. While sexualization is not that much different, because aside from that, you are viewing them primarily through their sexual appeal, and to expect a specific individual in this media to conform to what you think is sexually attractive. So we are aware that in media coverage, men continue to dominate in news and sports and video games and advertising, since we kind of associate these fields with men because they're dominantly there. But even though we're in a more developed society now and media is more inclusive regarding these things, women are still underrepresented and are often portrayed through stereotypical or objectifying lenses. So usually, when we do see men in news and sports and video games and advertising, etc., we are taking this at face value, or we're actually like just absorbing this content normally. But if women are in these fields as well, usually people tend to focus on the appearance or their emotionality or their dependent roles. So I think this is more prominent in video games. So let's say in video games, men are always like the main character, or they are like the saviors, the heroes, while women are usually like just a love interest, or they're just there to be saved, or they're just a supporting character. Of course, in media now we have a lot more female main characters, but sometimes there's still a prominent concept of objectification and sexualization going on. It's still not completely diminished, but it's getting better. So, from all of these gender stereotypes in the media that we are exposed to from childhood until now, obviously they're going to have their respective effects. So, these patterns of unequal and stereotypical gender representation have been shown to contribute to harmful and psychological and social effects. They can reduce political and career aspirations, reinforce traditional gender norms, and worsen mental health outcomes. So, for women, they may experience greater anxiety, depression, eating disorders, and reduced self-esteem. While men, adhering to traditional masculinity, may face increased stress, substance abuse, risky behavior, and higher risks of perpetrating violence. So, where can we see these effects? So, women experience greater anxiety, depression, eating disorder, reduced self-esteem because we talked about objectification and sexualization and how the media absorbers tend to focus on their body or what they can do or their capabilities, how they can match or keep up with male-dominated fields, something like that. While for men, since they're usually portrayed as strong, buff, muscular, like never emotional, something like that, they might force themselves to conform to this and even like develop these negative views because it is what is represented in the media. Additionally, when men are not conforming to this image of being the strong, independent, intense image, they're usually like shamed for it. So they're like, you're probably a homosexual, something like that. So they tend to like exercise this toxic masculinity because they feel like this is what is validating. This is how I can be validated if I completely erase my feminine side. So adding on to objectification, you can actually integrate this sexualization objectification. So there's non-sexual objectification. Women usually experience this more. So they are portrayed as purely aesthetic or decorative objects, or they're viewed as static models or supporting objects for any product. So they're still being objectified, yes, but it's not in a sexual context. While in sexual objectification, this is mostly experienced by women, but it's also experienced by men, of course. So women are disproportionately affected by sexual objectification, which is linked to sexism. So we can link this to what I just said earlier. So they're expected to conform to this image of sexy, slim, petite, and submissive. So people think that these kinds of women are easy and they will just submit to whatever they want to do to them or something. And it can also like contribute to the motivation for men to start thinking, oh, I can make an advance on this woman because she's submissive and she probably won't complain. So this is why sexual coercion and harassment occurs even through advertising. Well, for men, like I've talked earlier, they're expected to conform to the strong, buff, muscular image. So they might be hyper-conscious about their body, just like women. They also feel like they'll be shamed if they're not conforming to this, and they think that being feminine is weak. So, alongside those factors, sexual orientation also influences objectification. So, we can see this also in the present media, especially with BL or GL. Instead of actually producing a proper story featuring queer love, it is instead used as a fetish. It's not properly represented, and it's clearly there for the pleasure or for the fetishization of them instead of actually accepting them as just regular people. So what are the media platforms where we can see gender stereotypes in? So the first is video games. So this is the most common one since video games are like a huge part of today's culture. And like I've discussed earlier, usually they portray men as like the hero, while the female characters are usually the ones being saved, or the ones are just support characters, or they're just the love interests of the main character. So we can also see sexualization because people absorb content more if it's appealing. And when I say appealing, it's in a sexual context. Like, ooh, this game looks good because the jiggle physics is crazy. The other one is social media. So social media, I think this is just an umbrella for everything else. Video games, social media. So social media platforms like Instagram, TikTok, these are heavily focused on photos, on presenting yourself. So usually when you open Instagram or TikTok, you see these heavily edited photos of attractive people. You see attractive people, thirst trap, attractive person, thirst trap, attractive person. So you kind of form this image of beautiful person, beautiful person, beautiful person. So you tend to look at yourself and you compare yourself to these people that you see in the media, which kind of increases your insecurity, decreases your self-esteem, and you also tend to develop this ideal body type. So you like start thinking, oh, I'm so fat, I'm too thin, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, something like that. So that's also a harmful effect of social media in the context of gender stereotypes. However, we can't just completely talk about the bad sides, even though stereotypes really are just terrible. Like, there's no actual good stereotype. So, even though we talked about all of those negative things, there is still something positive that you can gain from social media now that we are getting more inclusive and we are getting a lot more open to change or like diversity. So exposure to more diverse beauty standards on social media has been associated with improved body satisfaction and positive mood. I think as long as you absorb the correct content and you make sure not to drown in these expectations, in these generalizations, in these stereotypes, as long as we don't conform to this and we don't like bury our heads in the media trying to conform to what is conventionally attractive, we'll be fine. Stereotypes will always exist and they will always be there because media is way too influential that it's getting scary, but it's there So all we have to do is learn how to be confident in ourselves and remember that we're breaking free from being constricted to these roles, to these traits that are expected from us. So we should remember, don't conform, just be yourself, and just generally be a good person.